Hey, my name is Adam Wrigley from Bots FC and Shatter.
My name is Paul Gancitano. You can call me Moose, and you're listening to the RoboCast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam Elliott64, and welcome back to the RoboCast with myself and World of Woodrow. Jevon, how you doing, man?
Ooh, I'm
It's
good.
it's, it's, it's bracket time.
It is indeed bracket time. Excitement rising. Somebody's going to be crowned the champion of BattleBots 2020, 2021 even.
Close.
God, the years are so confusing. I'll see what the website does. 2021/2022. Yeah,
Not
very
confusing
soon.
in the slightest, is it really?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And we're joined by, as we kind of introduced, Adam and Paul from Shatter. How you doing, guys? It's Adam, we had you on last year. Paul, it's your first time joining us. Welcome back. How you doing?
It's
Hey,
full Mid-Atlantic allergy season here, so apologize for the stuffiness,
No,
but
that's fine.
that's all you can get.
I'm nursing a very bad hangover, so we can go with that. That's absolutely fine.
I've just had a week of COVID, so
Uh, we're all suffering. Let's talk this season so far, because you are one of a number of teams this season up to this point who had only had two fights. Obviously, we spoke to Pete from Abramson last week, and he kind of alluded to the fact that scheduling just kind of cramped, and then there just wasn't time for those 2-0 bots to get their third fights. What was kind of your initial reaction to not getting one? Because it must have been frustrating for you guys, because we've said before, every team spends thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars right on these machines, and you turn up to an event expecting, okay, we're going to get a set number of fights to kind of not get your money's worth. That's not the right thing to say, but like to kind of justify you doing it, right? Surely it must kind of must have affected you a little bit, kind of thinking that we didn't get the full
yeah,
the full quota.
I think, our first reaction was that we were extremely angry, and that was also probably our second and third reaction. um, I think get your money worth is kind of right. We have sponsors who are giving us money, and we want them to get their money's worth in TV time. So that is one part of it, which was hugely upsetting. Secondly, is we use the fights to test things. You think you're going to get three regular season fights, you win your first two, that gives your third fight like a great sort of low risk way to test. You win, you get a higher seed, you lose, you're still in the tournament, so you can test something. We had a lot of new things going into our tournament fight, more than we would normally want, but were necessary for the setup. And then some of them didn't quite work so great. And it's like, if that had been our third regular season fight, we would have known a lot more going into the tournament. Instead, it was our first tournament fight, and now we're out. So that was really upsetting. And I just think, I understand what they're saying about, like, well, we only had so many fights left and we needed to figure out who can get in the tournament. I'm like,
Correct.
well, you guys should have thought of that earlier,
Yeah.
because you knew how many sessions you had, you knew how many episodes you had. It wasn't like there were ever going to be 20 more fights available. Like, that was how many there were. You
Yeah.
matched the wrong people against each other that ended up with the wrong fight records, and then now we're paying the price. The people who shouldn't get their fights are the people who have fewer wins. If you win, you should be rewarded, in my mind. It's just very backwards, and to do it that way. And I think they thought of it like a bye. I don't
Yeah.
think they thought of it like that. Like, they're giving
Mm.
us a bye week, and we should be happy. Like, but we want to be on
Yeah,
TV. We
the
want to
email
get the
we got
fights.
specifically said congratulations.
It
So
is. I mean, I suppose it's interesting in the sense that the only other upside, I suppose, is you don't take damage from a third fight, right? I suppose that's the only kind of silver lining. Is
Yeah.
there's a potential you fight obviously you were 2-0, you could have fought a rotator or a whiplash or whoever, and it could have been quite messy. But as it turns out, you don't get that data anyway. Like, it may not have been messy, you may have just turned up and stomped them. It's kind of, it's a difficult balance, and I understand their perspective of, okay, we've run out of time, but also, like, you guys need that data for later on down the line, obviously against Riptide, let's say, that, for example, it could have been a different story had you known going into it what setup to do or anything else along that matter.
It was one of those things where, we came in and we were a bit hesitant with the weapon because we didn't know how well the new hammerhead would work. And if we had been able to test that weapon out in our third fight, we would have known whether or not to be hesitant, which would have helped us in the early goings of that fight. But I think you're totally right. The productions thought was we would be happy to not break the robot.
Sure.
But we sort of come to the show because we want to break the robot on the show.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of back and forth, like we need to get that TV time to attract and retain sponsors. And so to do well, to go undefeated in the regular season, and end up with 2 matches on TV was I think really disappointing for us. We're happy to make the tournament. We're happy to get a high seed, and we're always happy to be at BattleBots. But we were hoping for more, and we're a little bit disappointed how the schedule ended up affecting some of the teams that did better in a negative way, especially coming into the tournament, which is such an important time. And it just felt like we were kind of thrown off at the end of there.
Yeah, we had so much momentum too, because our first 2 matches were great. Our match against Sub-Zero, it was a really fun, dominant win. Blacksmith was back and forth, a lot of fun for TV. Sitting at 2-0, we felt really good. We had a lot of momentum, and then all of a sudden we got the rug pulled out from under us and said, "You're just going to be sitting around until the tournament starts."
Yeah, it is pretty frustrating. I can completely get that. It's you turn up to fight. You don't turn up to sit around and twiddle your thumbs, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the detractions of having such a big field of robots that there's more robots there than you can fit fights for. So perhaps BattleBots takes a look back at this season, goes, okay, perhaps we need to tone it down a little bit, have less bots, perhaps a more varied field of
There's
sort
a great
of
post
newcomers
that Hypershock put out, wasn't there, of like the fact that season 4 was meant to have originally was meant to be 80 teams, and like you think, well, how on earth are 80 teams
no
going to
way.
get 3 fights? It's just not.
There's
it's not
no way.
viable unless you have like double the filming schedule at least. It's kind of crazy.
I think what was confusing to us is context setting and expectations. In the past, the way to get more fights in the regular season was to win more matches.
Correct.
And if you didn't win your matches, you didn't get more fights, right? Like we always knew in the earlier seasons, like you're not going to get 4 matches unless you're winning. If you lose your first 2, then you're only going to get 2, right? If you lose your first 1 horrifically, you might only get 1. But if you wanted more matches, you win more and you would get more regular season matches to prove yourself. And this was the first year they twisted the equation. And I think if they had just told us earlier, then we might have been happy about it. We would have been proud of the achievement to know that we earned that bye. But because we were thinking we were earning a 3rd fight, those mismatched expectations are what made all the teams get a bit upset, because it wasn't what we thought would happen. And I don't know why that happened and how that happened, but you're right. Like, it just seems like we need to know a little bit more going into it. Fewer robots would certainly be easier to get more fights and more consistent, but then you have fewer teams getting the chance to go out there. Is that better? I don't know. It's tough.
It's a tough balance. It's not an easy one to call for sure, but like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I do want to talk about your first 2 fights before we kind of crack on with the episode. Obviously, you mentioned Sub-Zero was one of those rare fights where they don't put a big kinetic weapon in the arena, and they always seem to be really fun. And this seemed like a lot of fun for you guys.
Yeah, I think we have fun. It was really disappointing to realize that like their weapon just wasn't working for some reason. I think they said later they had overpressurized the system and one of the valves kind of locked up. So it would have been more fun for sure if they had been able to flip us back and forth and had a little bit of back and forth. But it was nice for us to be hitting someone and having their panels coming off and to puncture a battery. And get a lot of real damage in there was great. But it's disappointing they weren't at 100% because they're a great team. We talked to them a lot. They use the same sort of speed controllers we do. So it was a little disappointing that they couldn't be at 100%. But yeah, I mean, we had fun.
And obviously your second fight was Blacksmith. I say the traitor to the hammers, I suppose.
You knew that this one was a long time coming. They've been talking about it for so long. I'm glad it finally got to happen. And we remarked on some other channels, but it's funny that they put 2 hammer robots against each other in the arena, and neither one actually wielded a hammer at all. We got a hammer saw against a sword.
Literally, it was a crazy thing. Hello, Steve. We're kind of partway through discussing the previous fights of Shatter this year. What have you made of Shatter so far? Good.
He's getting set up.
We'll cut that.
Yeah, I think Blacksmith was one that we wanted to fight for a while, and it's interesting because, we're both hammer robots, and they have a lot of popular videos, and everyone knows that in the past, they've had trouble with dealing damage with that hammer. And it was one of those tricky things where a lot of people said, "Oh, well, Shatter's better than Blacksmith," but we were always worried if we fought Shatter versus Blacksmith that their durability, drive power, etc., they would just bully us around the whole fight. And they would have so much armor that we probably wouldn't be able to do much to them, even if our weapon is more damaging. That they would be sort of a great counter for it. Like we're a scissor and they're a rock, kind of vibe. So even if we might be beating paper all the time, that they would still beat us if we matched against each other. But the interesting twist was in their redesign this year, their weapon became more dangerous, more of a concern for us. But they compromised some of the fronts by moving weight into the hammer system. They had to remove it from elsewhere. So they ran their heavy tops. They couldn't run such a strong front system against us. So they weren't able to push us quite as much as they might have been able to with last year's robot. And the new weapon was more vulnerable to ours. So we were able to do more damage than we might have been able to do in previous seasons. And they weren't able to push us as well as they might have been able to in previous seasons, which I think pushed the scale further to us this year. So we were really happy to fight them this year. Might have been a different fight in previous seasons, even though Blacksmith this year overall is probably a higher tier robot with that better damage potential. For us, it became a better matchup. So it was an interesting twist of details, I think. But we were really excited to face them, cross-state rivalry. We're always kind of got our online banter back and forth in the Facebook group and stuff. But
well, you say it's more damaging. The Merry Special.
Let's talk about the picture behind
perfect design strategy of taking out the belts, and almost first hit, you swing down and take out the belts. You do exactly as you'd planned to in just a beautiful move. It may have ended up a little bit banana shaped at the end of it, but
it's all going to plan.
Was that
fixable?
Hit, right?
It's called the hit, didn't it?
Yeah. Was that fixable? That sort of banana-ing? Did you manage to flatten it back down?
Yeah, Paul and I took it over to a hydraulic press. I think it was at the
Switchback.
Oh, yeah, Switchback.
Yeah,
Switchback.
We borrowed a lot of tools from them. They've been fantastic to us. They brought a whole machine shop's worth of tools.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, we put it on their hydraulic press, and about an hour later, going back and forth, we flattened it out.
Amazing.
It was so funny. We had video of it. I think it's on our website in the somewhere on the post-fight blog post on botsfc.com. But you can see us like pushing it down, and it would go flat, and we'd go past, and then it would like spring back to bent. So it took us a while to figure out like, okay, how far are we willing to push this past flat to try to account for the spring back? Because it was scary. I'm like, we're just gonna break it in half, and so it took so much bending to get it back. It's pretty flat again. But we're like, how compromised is this? Like how many work hardening have we done and everything else?
It's just going to snap the next time you swing it.
Yeah. It's pretty flat, though. We got it.
Flat enough. Flat enough for another fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the spare pile.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's in the worn to be looked at and maybe never used again, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a good memory.
In case of emergency. Yeah.
When you say it's a big question mark, is that the shape of it, or is it the?
At least you don't go the Skorpios route and snap an angle grinder on it. I mean, at least you got that just in case.
Yeah, it's just an angle grinder attached to the end.
Amazing. Let's talk about this week's fights. Of course, for those that haven't seen the episode yet, don't watch on anymore because it's big time spoiler territory. Because we're in the top 32 now. We're going to start spoiling people's days. And speaking of spoiling people's days, so what was your reaction when you saw the draw against Riptide, Adam and Paul? Because it seemed, for me, when I was filling out my predictions, it seemed like a very unfavourable fight for you guys.
Yeah, probably more anger. No.
Tell us how you really feel.
Honestly, my initial reaction was, oh, this isn't so bad. Mostly stemming from the fact that they were a rookie. And in some of their previous fights, we hadn't seen them shake out some reliability issues. We noticed that the bearings that their big egg beater was running on are actually kind of small. We thought we might be able to sort of knock it off its rails. then the more we started to think about it, and the more we started to analyze their design, that's when we started to panic, because we're thinking, okay, we don't really have an exact setup that can counter this. It's unlike anything we've ever faced before or anything we've prepared for.
It seems like a very the fact that their whole front end is kind of the same size as your front end, and kind of it hit like with a disc, it's kind of different because it's a very specific point it's hitting, whereas Riptide is all of it.
Yeah, I think the first thought was, maybe this isn't too bad. And then I was thinking about some of our lower weight class fights, like when we fought a robot called Bots with. I was
going to say this felt like a very similar matchup to Knockoff White versus Bots.
Yeah, and we said, oh well, that went fine. We just went over the top. And there's one key difference I'll get to, but I think the thing was, like Paul said, we saw they had reliability issues, so we thought, like, if nothing else, we should be able to outlast them, and the weapon will just break after a few hits or something like that. But this is the difference between 2 fights and 3 fights. They had a third fight where they found the flaw, and then they fixed it. They spent a very long time fixing it, but they fixed it before our fight. And that's one of those things where, like, that's where the difference is between, like, a bye in the sport isn't quite always equivalent, especially in the regular season. If we had a bye in the first round of the playoffs, straight to the top 16, awesome. Getting a bye in the regular season is a little bit different. And so they were able to get those kinks worked out and fix their reliability issues.
It's almost like with sports where you rest your best players. Like, is that really a good thing to do, or are you going to give them, like, it's whether or not
are they going to be out of form, sort of thing,
right?
Afterwards?
Yeah. And I think the big difference that we saw in this was in Bots. If you look closely at that video, Bots doesn't have wedgelets. They have little kind of vertical, like, wedge things on the side of the robot, on opposite ends of the beater bar, right, where the buttresses are. On a Riptide has wedgelets there, very small wedgelets. We didn't think they would have weight to run anything there because they were putting so much weight on the top, but they had weight to run them. And what that enabled them to do is, like you're saying, they're so wide. When they went straight on to us, those wedgelets, and I haven't looked in slow-mo, but what we think happened is those wedgelets got under our front just enough that allowed their beater bar to hit the bottom of our blade of armor. So instead of, like, in the knockoff white fight where the beater bar is just kind of bouncing off the plastic and not able to chew into it, it hit the bottom all at once with this gigantic wide piece of metal. And then when it did that, it just sheared every bone. It just ripped it off. Because unlike a disc, it didn't slice through it. A disc gets under us, it just slices through the plastic, kind of tosses us a little bit. But when you can get so much engagement, that's where the problems were. And as soon as we had one front on engagement, I was just like, oops.
And did it take off? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, your setup is you've got the ablative HDPE or
UHMW,
that's it. Yeah,
similar plastic denser,
followed by a metal piece of armor on the front as well behind that, and it's just taken both of those bits.
Yeah. So what happened was we have one big piece of plastic in the front. It hit half of it so hard that it ripped our one piece into 2 pieces. So it sent the one flying, then it sent the other half flying, and then it hit the metal behind it. And you can see the difference between when it was hitting the plastic and that was absorbing, like, some of the impact versus then when it was able to get that metal corner and just launched us into the wall.
Onto the sneeze guards.
It was painful. We think the hit that kind of did us in was they kind of hit us in the back at one point, and it kind of buckled in the billet, and that buckled the frame like a 1/4 inch or so, and then the magnets hit the ground. They're only like an 1/8 inch off the ground, and then when the magnets hit the ground, we were unable to move. There was some other things going on too, where the plastic back panel was kind of high centering us, and then we just get wedged in the wall. Like
on your hammer,
the strangest TKO ever.
I mean, you say that there's another one later on we need to talk about.
And I was like, where's my unstick? I thought we were supposed to get unstuck from the wall. They never unstick us.
So that hammer, the pulverizer that was actually coming down on us, was controlled by ours.
I was going to say, you were just trying to smash it.
We were trying to knock ourselves back into position, yeah.
Was it working?
No.
See, in a previous season, you may well have managed to dislodge the axe head, but you've mounted it differently for this fight. So instead of mounting through the top of the blade, it's now you're putting 2 bolts through to hold it.
Yeah, so
I watch your videos. I don't know what's going on.
we had 3 half-inch bolts holding it in from the top. We've changed it to 2 1-inch bolts coming in from the side, and they're not regular bolts. They're shoulder screws, meaning that the body of the bolt that's taking the forces has no threads on it, just solid 1-inch hardened steel. So it's much, much, much stronger, and they're not just going in through the metal arm. They're mounted inside of rubber bushings. So the hammerhead in the up-down direction is completely shock mounted, and it's also shock mounted in side-to-side direction, in addition to the arm can twist in that way. But the arm will hit directly on the hammerhead when we hit down. So when we're hitting you, no shock mounting. But if you hit us in any direction, the hammerhead is shock mounted.
It's beautifully designed, but unhelpful when you're stuck in the wall. Like
we did get one hit. We did get one hit.
I was getting excited in that moment, thinking, come on, Bots FC, let's see, sniping the lipo, come on, maybe, no.
He went over the weapon, just like the Bots FC fight, while we were kind of stuck in the corner. You can see they backed off after that point. They didn't come near us again. We hit their top panel, and we severed a motor sensor cable. We'll go over this in our post-fight video and in our post-fight blog. We were about an inch away from hitting every one of their receivers.
Oh.
And so it's one of those things, it's like, we got destroyed. Like, completely. But if we had been 1 inch off on that hit, we would have won the fight, or at least gone to a double KO. Judge's decision. So it's odd how close the blowouts are sometimes.
And the last thing, the smoke that was coming out, was that just from overworking the motors trying to get moving, or?
I think we might have lost.
That was one of our ESCs on the weapon. It blew up, which is, I think, why we couldn't actually fire the hammer and try to get ourselves out of that position. Is because
was it a weapon ESC? I thought it was a drive.
No, it was a weapon ESC.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of blocked a lot of that fight out of my mind. I actually forgot that we got stuck in the wall.
Did you just repress
everything
the whole
after
thing?
the robot blade of armor coming off was just like, well.
Them's the break.
Mistakes were made. It is unfortunate because obviously last year you had such a good season. You know, you only lost to Endgame in the top 8 in the main competition, and then this year, you know, losing to, admittedly, Riptide doing very well, but it still must have been frustrating thinking, what could have been, because you were already, like, you know, I said you were 2-0. It was looking pretty good, and then
I think over. Like Paul said, you know, we just didn't have a setup for it. The more we thought about it, you know, I think what production thought, or what everyone thought, was like, oh, okay, Shatter can beat Verts, right? Yeah. They beat Lockjaw last year, and this robot is a Vert. It's not as good as Lockjaw, and they'll be able to take him out. But the difference is in the width and how it affected our blade of armor and the setups we ran. You know, we just didn't have that setup. And I think if in retrospect, if we would go back, I would have run our Bite Force style front with just 4 wedgelets and tried to bet more on getting under them than what our bet was, which was that the plastic would be able to absorb the hit, right? The plastic was unable to absorb the hit. That was the wrong bet. And the best setup we would have had at the time would have just been the wedgelets, because if we ran our keep away prongs, the social distancing prongs, they would have gotten immediately destroyed, right? The little thumbs would have gotten torn off. So those wouldn't work. I think going back, we would have just run the wedgelets. We're making whole new fronts for next year, so we'll have better setups for this. But yeah, we just didn't pick the right one, and that's pretty much all on me, because I was like, we'll do what we did against Bots FC, and it just did not. This wedgelets changed it. It did not work.
We also drew inspiration from Minotaur. I mean, we fought Minotaur 2 seasons ago, and they also have a wide weapon. You know, it's considerably different, but we ran this configuration against Minotaur, and they were just grinding up against the UHMW. It didn't actually get a good bite on us. So we said, this is probably the most analogous situation to when we, you know, face Minotaur. Maybe this can work again.
It was close.
And it's similar to Minotaur. Eventually they got a hit on the titanium behind the plastic here, and again, like, sent us flying. But because everyone says, well, you lost the Minotaur fight. It's like, we did lose the Minotaur fight, but that was because they hit the titanium sticking out of the plastic. When they had been hitting the plastic, it was working very, very well. But yeah, not here. It might have been a difference also in the diameter of the weapon. That might have been a difference here, because Riptide is so much bigger. It would have been hitting a different part of our plastic, even if it wasn't for the wedgelets. But yeah, we'll have different setups, different fronts, different things, but it's just Yeah, we thought we had the data to prove that this was the right setup, and we just hit wrong.
They hit really hard. Let's just say that much,
Yeah,
right?
they do hit very hard, and when they get their bearings working right, they can hit very hard a lot of times.
Definitely.
I gotta say, one little thing that makes me kind of happy is when we were assembling the robot and kind of bored in the pits, I wrote "Oh no" on the titanium wedge.
We got to see it
before we put the UHMW on, and like in some weird twist of fate, like that corner of the UHMW came off and exposed that one like node, and they zoomed in on it.
It's so good. Like the fact that, you know, to be fair, at that point, if you know that that's on screen, like, you know you're having a bad time, right? So that's it's good to see that.
I think teams need to incorporate more like little Easter eggs into parts of their design, because, you know, teams put stuff on the bottom of their robot expecting to get flipped over. But if you put little Easter eggs behind pieces of armor that indicate,
or different color foam in the wheels. We've seen teams do that, where like it either seems like they're bleeding red or blue. You really hurt me.
Definitely.
We had a little sort of reference to knockoff white on this year's robot as well. If you look closely at the bottom of our robot, it has a bottom and quotes.
Bottom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll get to a little bit later on, I think, because obviously Shatter itself, you know, you are working on new Shatter. You are also working on another robot, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later on. But how would you kind of feel like, you know, going out at this stage, you know, having done so well last year, like, obviously not officially confirmed yet, but, you know, bounty hunters?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to say we're in bounty hunters, but we're out of the tournament, so I don't think it's a spoiler to say we're in bounty hunters.
You guys,
why would we
need
not
something to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent. I can't wait to see more Shatter later on in the season. But we will move on. Jevon, do you want to
I've been
talk?
putting it off.
I mean, you're still recovering, I'm sure.
So, for those that don't know, I'm, you know, Adam and Paul as well. Jevon picked Hypershock to win this year. It's his favourite robot, and P1 got its justice.
Yeah.
What a fight! I will say right here, right now, that thing was bonkers. Just from the little ramping and the Dukes of Hazzard's maneuver. Being upside down for quite so long and doing all right. It's the best they've driven upside down yet. It's going in the right direction.
Florida's got a bunny ear problem. I hope it's not like viral and spreads, because, I mean, it's not good.
They were too short. Yeah,
they were a little bit too short.
It looks like they bent because they fell upside down so violently that it flexed them. And I don't think they were
in the end.
Yeah.
Of course, that enormous hit as well, wasn't there? Right at the end, which killed their weapon dead.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just smash, done.
Well, it spent 90 seconds just grinding against the floor, so I'm not totally surprised that it was under a lot of stress.
I spoke to Will literally right after I watched the fight.
Give you an internet tunnel.
But for starters, because there's something a little bit secret on the bottom of the robot again this year, and I found it.
Yes.
And Will asked, whatever could that be? But yeah, I asked the question, what happened to the weapon? And his response was, not quite sure. It was a little bit funky towards the end. And after the buzzer went, we managed to spin up to full speed again. So, no idea what's happened there. They took it out to the test box. It spun up perfectly fine.
Might have got a bit hot or something.
Those are the worst kind of issues. One of those overheating things.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has also said something which is interesting for Will, and I think he may have been replaced by a clone or a duplicate or something. He said he's not going to redesign it because this year's is too good. Which I completely agree with. This year's is phenomenal. So they just need to work on, you know, what went wrong with the weapon.
Taller bunny
Make the ears a little bit bigger. You've got yourself a winning model.
We have this conversation every year with Hypershock. We're like, just please, just iterate.
Leave it alone.
Iterate.
Leave it alone.
Yeah. He said he's not changing it.
I don't believe him.
We have to change a few things because not everything went right this time.
He also said that he couldn't say on a previous thing that he's been on. He couldn't say what his favourite fight ever was, which means it's coming up. He also then said, you could take that to mean that it was the P1 versus Hypershock fight. And I said, it was a good fight. I'm not buying it. So yeah, hopefully, once again, we shall see Hypershock again.
I mean, it spent a lot of time upside down. Hopefully they got a lot of people to buy merch. That was really what we were going for.
Yeah. We got a good shot of the QR code.
I've got to say that the secret shop is expensive. Yeah.
Unless you've got money, don't bother.
I think I don't think it was a bad pick to pick Hypershock coming into the tournament because they were looking so scary, and I think part of that confidence coming in is what cost them there, right? If they had just been a little bit more patient,
and they only had 2 fights, just like you. You know, they never had that third fight.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do think that
if they had a third fight with that confidence, flipped upside down, and realized the ears were too short or flexed too much, they could have fixed it.
Yeah.
Again, another issue of not having that testing, not having that third fight that could have prevented that.
I hope for production's sake and for all your sake that you guys have the time you need to film, because the show suffered, unfortunately. It suffered with the power outage. It suffered with the rush schedule. It helps.
It's all learning, you know. It's this sport is still, I know it's been around for 20 years, but like the amount of seasons we've actually done and weekends we actually spent filming, I mean, it's almost like one season of NFL, right? Not even.
It's like time. You look at football or soccer and how long that sport has been going and how the rules develop over all that time, and as you said, this sport is what, 23, 24 years old now?
It's infancy.
It's a baby.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's so rare that we once a year we get a chance to go play with the big bots, and that once a year we say, oh, okay, maybe we should do it a little bit differently. And I don't think any of it is malice. You know, it's just we're just still trying to figure out some of it.
Yeah, honestly, one of the best things about the 2020 season was that since we didn't film in front of an audience, we didn't have to align to 8 fights per session. So this way, when things were falling behind, we were able to cram as many fights into a shorter period of time as we could. In 2021, with the audience again, when things started to slip, we still had to align to those taping schedules, so we couldn't make up those extra fights.
Which also affected a future fight of a pick I made, and oh boy.
Yeah, but I was going to say we'll discuss that when it comes to it. But there would have been time for a certain robot to make the tournament that didn't.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to say in terms of this fight is, obviously, for me, I think we're right. I think Will could have been a little bit more patient, but let's not take anything away from P1 because Brandon drove it beautifully again. Like for the third time this season, he's just driven it superbly.
Having a conversation with people this week about how I feel Hypershock is sort of one of the most overrated robots, in that it seems that everyone is talking about it except I'm not hearing much talk about it. And if that's the case, P1 is direly underestimated. And it really shouldn't be, because P1 is a superb machine, and it was super unfortunate to not make the bracket last year. Really, you know, we've discussed at length the shortcomings of that. But this year, not only have they made the 32, they've made the 16, and that is a phenomenal step in the right direction. They
won that fight clearly. I mean, you can say, yes, Hypershock got those 2 big hits, and Shock...
Hypershock got 2 hits in a 3-minute fight that P1 controlled and was aggressive for.
And they used... Well, if strategy was a category, they left them upside down, you know?
They did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Brandon drove in a position where he made Hypershock have to work to self right again.
There was a moment where P1 had its flipper up to say almost, no, you're not going to use me like a ramp again.
Right.
You can stay there.
You were saying, Adam.
They drove that absolutely perfectly, and I think they earned that judge's decision.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty clear that they would win because, you know, when you get those 2 big hits, I think they're very flashy, and people say, wow. But if that big hit didn't do anything, didn't damage the robot substantially, then all that hit was a moment of control. A split-second moment of control, pretty strong control. But then immediately P1 is back in and controlling the fight again. And then not only did you not damage P1, you damaged yourself somehow.
Correct.
And so
this season, damage is damage.
Yeah, even if it's temporary.
Yeah. And I think that's the right way, because that's all that matters. I mean, if I'm in a fist fight and I break my hand punching your face, I'm going to lose the fist fight. I can't say later, well, if I hadn't broken my hand, but I did break my hand, right? So
that's control of the opponent's face.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's funny because I think P1 is underrated. But if you look back to the Robo Games days, P1 is so much more like Original Sin in the way it works at BattleBots than free shipping is. In that it's low, it's controlling, it's durable, it's driven well. That it really is sort of the heir to that sort of robot. And if you remember the Robo Games days, Original Sin always used to win. It was the one to fear. It wasn't always Tombstone. Like you might not come out of an Original Sin fight in a bundle of parts, but you'd come out with a loss.
And you'd have a sick feeling in your stomach of what did I do wrong.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so that's what I think P1 can be. And I think for a lot of the more casual fans and the newer fans who they don't remember that or don't know about that, they underestimate control bots and wedges, because spinners have gotten much more powerful and durable these days. But it's not to underestimate the control bots and the wedge bots and how they fight.
Yeah,
definitely. Let's talk about fight number 3, which was our 32 seed play-in between Malice and Skorpios. Skorpios bullying Malice for 3 straight minutes, pretty much. It was unbelievable.
I can imagine
kept working.
Diana just going, sorry, for the full 3 minutes, because for those that don't know, Bunny and Diana are the best of friends. And it's such a harsh matchup to put them against each other, but I think it's one they'll enjoy.
Poor Malice's weapon as well. Okay, they got it working just perfectly against Blacksmith, and then
straight out the gates.
Boop, I mean, prime fight for Skorpios, right? They're built to fight horizontal.
Exactly.
I was just confused why this was even on TV.
Yeah,
it was a play-in match.
Yeah,
I feel like they kind of for the drama kind of build it up, right?
Cut our tournament fights.
I just think of it from these people did not do well enough to make the tournament. Now I love both these teams; they're great teams. But you should not be airing a play-in match over people who made the tournament. This is, again, giving TV time, giving sponsorship time to teams who didn't do well enough. And what are we trying to reward here? Is this a sport, or is this I don't know. It just pushed me the wrong way, because it felt, again, like just mismatched expectations and, I don't know. Just not sporting to me. Like, especially if the entire F1 race zoomed in on the last 2 people for the entirety of the race and said, this is the battle for 19th place, and never once showed the leaders. Maybe a bit more extreme, but that's the vibe I get here when you show this fight over people who properly seeded higher and made the tournament.
Especially and again, the fights that were cut as well.
The whole point of all those 1-on-1 people fighting each other was so they could more easily seed the bottom of the tournament, and we still ended up with play-in matches, right? What is this argument about not having enough time? I don't know. I don't think it's malice. It's not what I would have done. So it's more just confusion on my part. It
was literally malice, though, wasn't it? It was in this fight. It was malice.
in this case, it's literally malice.
I will say, especially when the fights that were cut in this episode were very good, and we'll get to those a little bit later on. I'll never tire of watching Skorpios. It's wonderful to watch around the arena. Zach drives the wheels off that thing every single fight. But I completely get your point. At the end of the day, we're here to see the top 32, not the 32 playing or highlight that fight and kind of say, hey, look, this happened earlier because they had a play-in for it, but here's the results, and now they're fighting this team.
Yeah. It's also a great opportunity to hype the main tournament. You put the play-in matches on YouTube ahead of time. You say, check out the play-in matches. Get excited for this week's episode. Look how good these are. Imagine how good this week's episodes will be. Exactly. And it just feels weird, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an interesting one to kind of pick the bones of. But ultimately, Skorpios was fighting a robot it's built to fight, and the result was as such.
Big durable wedge is going to beat a horizontal almost every time. They've got perfect
Concerning
shape for it.
weenies.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that a little bit later on as well. The weight distribution of Skorpios with that new weapon is a bit suspect, but we'll highlight that a little bit more when it fights Endgame later on. In the meantime, we'll talk about fight number 4, which was a stunner between Bloodsport and Minotaur. Oh,
It's a fight between the two bots that have previously beaten Endgame, who will get to have a go again.
basically.
Maybe. We'll wait and see.
Well, yeah, they are. Minotaur in this fight was just on absolute tear. And for those that haven't seen Nick Bucholtz and his video on the Bloodsport channel about their weapon choice, very interesting.
The club sandwich.
Interesting choice, especially considering the fact they had all those problems with the S7 weapons last year, and they kind of realised, okay, we didn't have the weight to do the AR weapons with the same style. It was a really good insight as to why they chose it, because I looked at it as soon as I saw the weapon, I thought Minotaur's just going to eat that, and sure enough, it did. And
but it
probably
did all the
anything.
things that they said. Hopefully, it won't do in that video with the sort of bending up and the.
But
the
what else
S7
could they have
coming
done,
off
right? Like, because an S7 bar would have just been snapped anyway. And
I think use the key. I know that they said they couldn't use the key, but I have seen that thing teased so much, and I really want to see it now. So just use it. Go full send.
just for
key.
the art
I want
style.
to see the key.
I don't know how much of a difference it would have made. As soon as I saw this matchup, I knew exactly how it was going to play out, because Bloodsport relies on getting some room to breathe. You know, they turn their weapon off, they turn their weapon on. They need a couple of seconds to really gain their ground. And Minotaur is just notorious for being right on you the entire match. Yeah. And I knew that that's exactly what they were going to do in this one too.
Absolutely.
It was just curtains. It's not an ideal for Bloodsport at all, because obviously the armor package that Minotaur brings is just so very tanky. It's so small that they can afford it to be maximized with their armor weight and that package they bring. They had a really tight setup this season with a drum that fits snugly within there as well. It's just there is no room for big damage unless you've got something that can really cut into it, and I just didn't see that happening with the Bloodsport weapon.
I was impressed with Bloodsport's ability to keep moving after taking so many direct chassis hits from Minotaur. I mean, I think that when you look at a lot of big horizontals, usually if you can get to their chassis, it doesn't take a lot of hits to take them out. But the Bloodsport billet was working really well with all those direct chassis hits from Minotaur. So I was impressed with that. I mean, the weapon didn't hold up very well. They weren't able to get spinning very well, but they were taking those hits and still moving, which was pretty impressive. Yeah.
I was surprised that they managed to keep spinning quite as well as they did, because I think they managed to remove both of the S7 weapon teeth, which balanced it out again. But I must have missed the second one go, because there's one goes and I'm like, oh, well, that's going to be unbalanced now. And then I'm just watching and going, no, that's spinning fine. It's not shaking itself apart. It's just, okay.
Yeah. I think a testament has to be that Bloodsport was still running at 3 minutes, and the weapon was kind of still working at 3 minutes as well.
Yeah.
Like, after going, like, it wasn't as if Minotaur kind of, I know they stopped their weapon for a little bit, but it was working again at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
It is a case of, you went 3 minutes with Minotaur at full power and just didn't die. It was unbelievable.
And so that was really good. I mean, it was obvious who won the fight, and it was a terrible matchup for Bloodsport, and Minotaur did what we thought Minotaur would do. But I will say I was impressed with Bloodsport, like, staying together. Like, I would have thought if their weapon bar did that they would have just been done. But they were able to keep going, which was really, really impressive. I will say, though, they call it a club sandwich. It only had 2 pieces of bread.
The
club
3.
sandwich needs a third. Did it have a third of them?
No.
It had the aluminium core, didn't it?
Yeah. So the aluminum is the meat of the sandwich, right? And then you've got the AR bread. You need a third piece of AR to make it a club sandwich. And I think that's what failed them. If they had that third piece, then it would have
keep
been
going
okay.
up and up and up.
Yeah. You get 2 pieces of aluminum, 3 pieces of then it would have been
Yeah, perfect.
And some lettuce.
As is just a regular sandwich. Yeah. Where's the bacon? There's so many elements.
I think it's still in Battle Royale.
Yeah, still spinning around. It was a good fight, but kind of one-sided, and Minotaur deservedly going through to the round of 16. Fight number 5.
It's another poor matchup, unfortunately.
Well,
for,
we kind of called this, didn't we, in our 32 preview between Hijinx and SawBlaze. I mean, it was to say
they
that
removed a motor, just fully took it out.
it was surgical, wasn't it? Really. Although I don't think SawBlaze was at full capacity, because like towards the end it really started to like labour with its weapon hits. I think
there's a hit where they managed to hit their own chassis or their front wedge, and it seemed to not spin quite as well from there.
Yeah, correct.
So I don't know if they've managed to jar something in their system when they've done that hit, but yeah.
Poor Hijinx. Poor Hijinx.
The wheels stayed on.
They did stay on, and
they kept driving for 3 minutes. To be fair to them,
it was probably
on one side.
Yeah, it was probably their best, like durability wise, their best performance in BattleBots period with Hijinx. But yeah, SawBlaze is something scary, and like it was again just the way that it kind of sliced the whole tail off as well. Unbelievably good.
Yeah, it reminded me of like taking the tail off of a shrimp before you Yeah, I love every SawBlaze fight that ever existed. I mean, they're my favorite robot to watch because they're so aggressive. They're always stay on you. They cause so much damage. It's just, this was another prime example of them dominating.
Yeah, I mean,
I had picked SawBlaze as a robot I really want to drive in our AMA recently because I think like I would be so much more aggressive with the weapon. I'm always so hard when I watch him fight, and he holds it. Like Jameson is the most patient driver in the world with his weapon, and I would just be smashing. Maybe I probably wouldn't win as many fights, but I just want to, for one time, go out and just be like crazy with it, you know? Like, but, man.
You bring that up, and it's interesting. When we were watching it at the start of the fight, where the spinner's not spinning because JMO gets him pinned and then spins up and then hits. He really uses that full 10 seconds. Of pin time, but everyone was concerned watching it. It was like, oh no, it's not spinning. I was like, yeah, you wait. Here we go.
Does it? I wonder how much of it is a mental thing to get in your head, because you're like, oh no, you know, you're just waiting for him to spin it up, waiting for him to hit you. In the lower weight classes, he's giving you time for tap out. In the upper, we don't even have tap out. He's just like, he still does it.
I was going to bring up Megatron because obviously you fought Megatron, you know, with your featherweight emulsifier
quite a few times recently.
A lot, yeah. I was going to say, was it twice at the last Norwalk, or was it three times?
Three times at the last Norwalk.
Oh, my
God. It was, wasn't it? It was beat it, sent it down to
losers, and then they beat you, and then they beat
you, and then they beat you again.
Yeah. Yep. Like what would you do in a fight against SawBlaze with let's say Shatter as an example for now. Obviously we'll talk a bit more about Heavy Emulsifier a bit later, but like what would you do? Because how do you even fight it at this point?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're redesigning the whole front end for next year to have more adaptability. So, you know, we'll have a different prong set up to go against him. Top armor is always hard on a robot like Shatter, which is big and wide and flat. I think it's sort of like JMO's like dream matchup, right? To go against us with how much area we have for him to smack. We ran our top armor config against Blacksmith. I mean, Blacksmith is very similar to SawBlaze. I think if we had fought them in 2021, we probably would have ran a very similar setup to what we ran against Blacksmith. But you know, we're always making iterations, so we're working on it for next year to be better than that. So we'll have more weight for armor and configs next year. But I think, you know, it would probably look somewhat similar to the Blacksmith fight in terms of what we would run. But he really beats us a lot in the featherweight. So, you know, we'll see. It would be nice. It would be nice to win one against him with the heavies. So, who knows?
Absolutely. Definitely. Let's talk about Fight 6. So it was meant to be Witch Doctor versus Glitch, but for those that have seen online from Witch Doctor and Glitch in particular, they both put big posts out about what happened because Glitch weren't there. Yeah. And the super sub that was brought in, much to my delight, was Mammoth. So it was Witch Doctor versus Mammoth.
What I will say before we discuss the fight itself, I do just want to talk Glitch very, very briefly.
Absolutely.
Because in their rookie season, going undefeated in the pre-season is a massive, massive step for them, and really quite phenomenal, bearing in mind, you know, the issues that they've had with between fights, getting it all back together again. And I mean, I think I'm right in saying these rebuilds that they were having before this matchup were happening between almost every fight, where they're having issues getting it back together. But they managed it, and they managed to get 3 wins to their season, which is a phenomenal rookie season for them.
And their strength of schedule was pretty decent too.
Yeah.
What a crazy season for them, because it could have gone so much differently. Like their first matchup against Chuck and Ghost Raptor, not a lot of drivers would have done what he did and let them go. And if they don't do that and they immediately lose that fight like that, I'm not sure they get a second or third fight. Certainly they don't get a second fight against Hydra like they did.
No.
And so their season could have gone very differently if that hadn't happened. So, I mean, that's BattleBots for you, is always a little bit of luck of the draw and how the fights go.
Definitely.
But that was a why. That was like a fork in their season. And Chuck gave them another chance, and they took full advantage of it. It's cool to see another omnidirectional robot doing well. So proving that you don't just need 4 Brazilian wheels to be successful. You could do something a little bit different and still work well. So quite the season for them. Disappointing to see that they couldn't get their top 32 fight. Another weird decision in my mind. This was pushed to the last fight of the top 32. They couldn't make it happen. At that point, to me, you don't substitute the number 9 seed with the number 35 ranked robot. You give the team who is fighting them a bye. That's how it should work. And again, just why did this fight happen?
It didn't really offer anything either, because we've seen before. Mammoth has fought with Hypershock, which he really, you can. Obviously, they're very similar robots. They share workshops. They've done shows together. They're one and the same, more or less, right? And the same result, it offers. God bless them, Mammoth. They had a go anyway.
They tried,
but
they always go out there and try hard, and they're a difficult robot to fight. Especially, you saw our fight against them. They're weird shaped.
One of the best fights of last season, I thought, by the way.
Yeah, it was fun. we were doing we were doing somersaults up a jungle gym, it was great. And so I think they're a cool robot to have on the show. I think they're a really interesting take on how to make a robot, and it works really well sometimes when you don't expect it. That Witch Doctor had some valid concerns around we have bits that stick out that they might catch. But to me, again, is this a sport or what? Because you don't just replace the number 9 seed with the number 35 seed in the NCAA tournament. That is never going to happen. If the team can't come out when it's scheduled to happen, it would be a forfeit, right? And so it's confusing to me, and I just personally dislike it if we're trying to be taken seriously as a competitive sport and not just a spectacle on TV. These are the moments where you have to make the tough decision and not just randomly sub someone in to just get a fight on. And then if you do it, again, rewarding the number 35 seed with more TV and sponsorship time, to me is odd. Again, I like Mammoth. I like the team. If I was 35, I would have taken the opportunity too. Of course. But it's just odd to me that those are the decisions that get made. I know it's tough. We're all learning every year, but I personally would like to see it more like a competition, like a real sport, the way you would see tournaments run and elsewhere. And we were talking before this podcast about F1's difficulties last season, trying to deal with a weird situation. A lot of people were mad about that. These decisions are tough because you don't want to piss your fans off. Controversy is controversy, which can be good, but when they get angry is when they'll start to stop watching. There were a lot of people angry about this episode online. So it is what it is. We'll get there. Congrats to Witch Doctor, and congrats to Mammoth for getting a chance in the tournament. That's nice.
Yeah, especially after the struggles they've had this season. They I think blew it up before their first fight. They've sort of been fighting back ever since. So
do you find it crazy that Mammoth got a top 32? Okay, obviously I know they did, but they got a top 32 fight, with a strength of schedule of Hijinx, Tombstone, Lucky, and then Witch Doctor. I think that's ridiculous. Who would have thought Mammoth would have been, a few years ago when Mammoth arrived to this point? It's crazy. It is crazy.
Their tournament run last year spoke volumes. That
it's very legit.
struggle to have a game plan against it. And it's one of those things where Huge, I think people now do have a game plan against. As soon as you can hit that body, you're looking at a decent game plan. Mammoth, what are you doing? How do you fight it? What are you going to do? What are they going to bring this time? Nobody can predict a Mammoth fight, I would say.
We were really sweating last year. I mean, that was the most nervous I've ever been in the 3 seasons that we've been doing this, is waiting for that judge's decision to come through.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And you fought like big teams as well, right? You fought, Witch Doctor, Minotaur, so many cool, like, high-end machines, and then Mammoth was the one that was like, oh god, what if?
I mean, it's 95% empty space. What are we supposed to hit?
True.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's a similar strategy to Huge. You just got to hit the body or hit the wheel. But with Mammoth, it's really, really hard to hit the body or the wheel. It's just such a weird shape, and it's so wide, and then you get stuck and you can't get around to the wheels. Huge, if you can take the weapon hits or something, there's some stuff you can do. It would also be a hard fight for us to go against Huge. But it's like, we're on a different... We've talked to other people about this, and it's sort of like, new pitchers in baseball or whatever, they come in and no one knows how to hit them, or a new goalkeeper in hockey, they come in, nobody knows how to score on them. When you have a newer robot, you got to find those ways to beat them. Maybe people are starting to find the ways to beat Mammoth now, after, seeing some of those fights. But not every robot can achieve it, because, it's just such a weird one. And you don't fight another robot like Mammoth, so everyone's coming in with an untested setup and an untested strategy and just trying to make it happen. But yeah, hope to see them back. And it's just so weird. Just such a weird robot.
It really is. It's weird and wonderful, to say the very least.
In the best way. I mean that, like in the best way. Yeah.
So we have 2 YouTube fights this week, which were Huge and Uppercut and Lucky and Copperhead. We'll start with Huge and Uppercut first. I've spoken a little bit to Jonathan about this fight after, he came on last week. He was he was gutted because obviously his season had come to an end, but he was so close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked him what happened, what killed him. It was the PCB board, I think it was, kind of started to come out, and that was it. The weapon work was still working, the weapon was still driving, everything else was still kind of it all plugged in. It just, things started to come off the electronics, and that was it. And they epoxied it all down afterwards and said that it won't happen again. It's such a shame because it was so
going
close.
Really, really well for them. They were taking the hits from Uppercut. We spoke, as you said, we spoke to him last week, and he did show us some of the impacts he took from the Uppercut fight. And those chins, it had gone through the first layer of chin, not gone through the second layer of chin. So they were just absorbing the hits. That Tegris material is super absorbent, and was taking the punches, and Uppercut was not taking the punches. Their side poles,
their weapon shaft fell out.
Yeah, they were on the ropes. They really were. It was a struggle. And when we were speaking about the top 32 with Pete last week, I said about the drive on Uppercut being quite wily this season. This fight demonstrates it perfectly because they looked panicked. They didn't. They weren't as composed as we might have seen them last year. It seemed very squirrely and very, oh god, I need to get in there again, punch in, whatever. Oh no, I'm upside down. Oh god, I need to try and drive. I can't drive. We're counted out.
It's not often that they're the ones that are getting tossed to the other side of the arena. So I think the first time that happens, it's like, oh no, what do we do now?
Yeah.
What a great hit as well from Huge to make that happen. We spoke about the improvements to Huge's weapon system this year. It's just way, way more competent, and just launching Uppercut the way it did was outstanding. But not meant to be this time, unfortunately. Just so.
The Huge team have put up a big thing on their website of the breakdown of everything, and they've also teased something which I'm going to show now. The best is still yet to come, by the looks of things.
What a silly fight between Deep Six and Huge that's coming. I mean, my god. You can't wait.
I'm excited. It's going to be a fun one.
It really is. For me, it's a good... Hijinx had a really big recovery this season. After the frustrations of last year, the bike rack and everything else that went along with it, to get wins against unusual opponents in retrograde and switchback, and then nearly, beat Uppercut, which a lot of people think could have won it this year. It's very impressive, and credit to that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the other YouTube fight then, which is Lucky and Copperhead. This was really good. I wanted to see this on TV.
Yeah.
This is honestly my favorite fight of the entire card, even though it got cut. I thought this one was incredible. I really enjoyed it.
I thought that Lucky took abuse from Copperhead for pretty much the whole 3 minutes before even losing a wheel. It was sensational.
If you look back at 2019 Lucky to this year's, and they'd have been done in the first minute of 2019, and they've got all the way through to a decision this year. It's such a world apart from the last time that they fought. Yeah. The driving is, again, it's on point, and they were doing so well. A little bit of running away in this fight, which, at that point, the game plan was out the window, I think. So, yeah, didn't earn them many aggression points, let's say, but I don't think they thought the decision would be going their way anyway, because Copperhead were dominant.
Yes, as much as the praise has to go to Lucky for surviving, Copperhead were turning it on quite a lot, and it looks pretty damn scary. It
was like 3 minutes of one bolt coming off at a time, and that's what I love watching about Copperhead fights, is that it's just so like 1,000 nibbles that are just ripping this off and that off.
As what they call the YouTube exclusive, death by 1,000 bites or something like that.
Exactly.
It's very Minotaur-esque in that way, it's just chewing away high speed. Seeing Copperhead come along the past few seasons, they're really dialing in their reliability, and just a tank. It's so small that the armor is incredibly thick. It's one of those robots you think, how do you go against them? It's tough. It seems like the only way they lose is when they beat themselves almost. So if they can just get their reliability dialed in, they're a really, really, really tough robot to fight.
Yeah, we got super lucky when Mammoth beat Copperhead last season, because then we got to face Mammoth instead of Copperhead, which we were, talking to ourselves, how the heck are we going to hit that thing? It's so small.
Absolutely. For me as well, another thing that we've kind of gushed over for the last 2 years in particular is the beautiful artwork that Kimberly does on the Copperhead drama.
You didn't get to see it.
They posted it online. It's about.
Oh, that's all right. I've not seen it yet. I need to go and find that.
Go and find it. I'll send it to you later, Jevon. It's really nice. It is really pretty. Again,
but again, didn't get shown off on TV.
No,
Naughty.
Come on, guys. There's better.
If you want to get your fight on TV, you're gonna have to do a little bit worse. Okay, you gotta see like this.
Yeah, you got to be the 39th seed.
That's these are the new rules that we got to play by.
Playing against Kingpin or something.
Bringing that back from a couple of years ago. Let's talk about I was going to say the main event, but it's not really. It's just the last fight of the episode.
The last fight.
Skorpios and Endgame. What a strange setup for Skorpios, right?
Yeah, right. First things first, Skorpios should have been at least the 31st, 32nd seed already. They had 2 main event losses, and it's a bit of a crime that they weren't just given that space, because they had really strong fights that lasted till the judges. One of those fights was a split judges' decision. Why the hell were they not a seed?
They both were, weren't they?
They may well have been, actually, yeah.
Yeah, they both were.
They may well have been. So, yeah, why the hell were they not a seed? But, yeah, I can see why, because 1 and 2, but, you had the spaces left, and they're the strongest 1 and 2 you have, so...
But see, this is, again, a weird situation. Like, if you have a team who's lost the main event, and then giving them another main event, you're opening yourself up to this problem. If they just hadn't done that, then the schedule would have ended up with them 2-1, having faced a more mid-tier opponent. Like, it was weird matchups that got these situations. And I just think sometimes it's like, well, this will be a cool fight, and it's true, but you got to think of the implications on the schedules and the rankings at the end of the season. And again, everyone was rushed after that first power outage. And I think part of that played into a lot of the matchups and the rankings being weird at the end, because of trying to rush the fights.
The rest of the season together, basically. Yeah.
But yeah, as you were saying, Sam, the setup on Skorpios was odd.
It didn't look right, did it? Like it looked unnatural.
Look right. It was. I mean, as I was saying earlier, aggressive wheeling, not helped by the fact that they've now taken the weight that they did have off the front. It was a. I can see why they would do this setup. They were sort of going for a more dustpan-y approach without having the base of the dustpan, but at the same time, I've been attacked by Huge. It's all gone wrong behind me. Absolute trauma. This was a interesting one.
For me as well, like, I think what happened was they took off all this armor at the front to kind of put more armor underneath, I'm assuming, and then I'm sure they could have fit like a basic wheelie bar or something. Like, I'm not to take anything away from the Skorpios team. They tried thinking outside the box and kind of, try and outdo Endgame at something different, but I mean, it didn't help, bless them, and they paid the price quite quickly.
As soon as they came out in the pre-game sort of show-off, you could see that wheelie happen. I was like, and it's like, ooh, that's not going to be
bode
good.
well, does it really?
Yeah.
And the fact that they got kind of balanced on the... I was alluding to your kind of hammer pinning earlier. They got kind of stuck on the upper deck, and the hammer saw getting wedged under the wall as well, so they couldn't move either. That was just unbelievable.
They were proper stuck. That was... I think that is the idea that they had of making the upper deck not have the boxed-in section, that robots should probably get stuck if they have like one wheel hanging over but couldn't quite touch the floor on that side and one wheel stuck in the air. I think that was the trap they were trying to set up, and it finally happened, but kind of not.
Not how they expected to.
No.
Yeah, definitely. And Endgame continues.
It's just, Endgame is their game is the ground battle. And if you're going to try and beat them at it and fail, then there's not much you can do after that. I think, to me, the way to beat robots like that is to drive around them to get to the side. And what the shelf or the upper deck has done is just completely eliminate the ability to get around robots. It's so hard to drive around to the side of someone when you have so much less room, because if you go into those alleyways, you're done. And you don't want to go near their hammer, etc. And you're trying to avoid the kill saw slots so you don't get stuck in them. And then the robot that's relying on this ground game just kind of points at you. And how do you get around that? You got to play the ground game to get around it, right? You just got to go head to head and then hope your ground game wins. That's sort of what we're getting at this year is with the social distancing prongs was like, okay, yours need to get under us. Ours just need to get tangled with you. For our strategy to work there. So that was our approach against it. But I think that the upper deck was kind of made to limit the ability of these meta robots to just win the ground game and win, and to make control bots and flippers and such better. But in my mind, it's actually made the problem worse, because it shrunk the arena so substantially that you just can't have a driver's battle. It's just like jousting.
I do wonder if they split the deck into two corners at the back there and had sort of outer corners that are upper decks effectively, that you then have to drive over the screws to get back down. So you are forcing them to use those screws to get back off.
I think that almost all the builders would vastly prefer the corner arrangement that you've suggested. I think the way that it's constructed, it would be very difficult to make that change.
Yeah.
The way the screws work, the way the panels work, like I'm not sure if it's feasible for them to do it. But I think all the builders would like it. There's talk about like, what could we do to the shell? Can we make it a little smaller? But I just think those corners and the alleyways, it's really hard. It just makes the arena so much smaller.
You need to have it like one of those penny push machines if you're staying with Vegas, that it just comes in and out like that. And maybe you'll get stuck on it, maybe you won't. It depends if it's out.
And it gets sucks back into the...
Yeah,
that's it.
The way the
ram rig
deck,
back from...
The way the upper deck was marketed to us at the beginning of the tournament was that if you were up on that thing for more than 10 seconds, you would be knocked out. And that's why when somebody gets thrown up there, the red lights start flashing. And I'm not sure if that was ever communicated to the audience or if it just hasn't happened.
I don't think it was ever communicated to the refs either, because they then do the 10-second count out afterwards, so it might as well just be a normal bit of floor.
Right, yeah. Just like another example of rules that kind of need to be shored up, in addition to... I think overall the popularity of the Upper Deck hasn't really hit the way that the production team has wanted it to, because everyone that we're kind of seeing, activity online are saying, this is really not a positive aspect to this sport.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what happens next season, to see if it disappears, to see if it gets reconfigured. But I think all that feedback is hopefully making an impact.
Fingers crossed. We can only hope so.
You just gotta think about like what is the goal of the arena and the hazards, and it used to be that it added damage to the fight because some of the robots back in the early 2000s didn't do a lot of damage. They made the fights more exciting. Oh, the hammer crushed them, the saws came up and tossed them, when the robots themselves weren't capable of doing that. Now you have robots that are capable of doing that. And what the hazards are doing now is pushing people towards the center of the arena. You don't really want to go over the saws because you'll lose some control of your robot. You don't want to go near the hammers again because you'll lose control of your robot. You don't want to go in the alleyways because you don't want to get pinned. So it pushes everyone to the center of the arena. And when you're pushed to the center of the arena, you have more contact between the bots themselves because they're not just driving around in circles, which in a way is good. Okay, you want more impact, but I think it's gone a bit too far, because it's just kind of turned into a joust and a battle of the ground game, or in the case of Mammoth and Huge, the kind of anti-ground game. But you just have robots jousting, like hit, right on, like front to front, and whoever loses it, it just gets tossed into a corner and destroyed. You have cool fights like Lucky and Copperhead where they're able to drive around, but it gets rarer when the hazards are pushing everyone further and further to the center. And that to me is, as a driver, what the impact of the hazards are doing. It's pushing us more and more to the center and more into this jousting arrangement, which does get more hits. But is that going to encourage bot diversity in the long term?
Yeah,
I don't know. So in the short term, yeah, it's great, lots of big hits. In the long term, how do you win that?
Same. Yeah,
without a
they had that ridiculous stat that they put up a couple of episodes ago that it was like 30% more hits per capita or whatever than last season.
Based on what? What data is this?
Big hits per minute. Yeah, come on, that's an official
number of big hits. Yep, great.
Well, wait a minute. Do they have data they're not sharing with us? Is there fight? Is there advanced stats that we could have?
Amazon Web Services, get on it. Come on, I want to see.
If you flip over the BattleBox, there's actually a QR code that you can scan, and it will take you to the secret stat store.
Yeah. I want to know how many duels won we have.
Yeah.
Where is that?
That pretty much sums up the episode. But before we let you two go, obviously you've always competed in BattleBots, at least with Shatter. This week just gone, you've released a trailer upcoming for a brand new Bots FC heavyweight Emulsifier. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first off, we definitely didn't release that as a distraction from our horrifying losses. That's total rumor. But we're really excited about Emulsifier. We did a total aesthetic redesign on it for this season. A lot of people know we applied last year. We didn't make it in. We actually applied the season before, so this is sort of a third time's a charm. Hoping to get in with Emulsifier. It's been doing really, really well at lower weight classes. We're perennially going against Megatron. We're 1 and 2 with Megatron on the bot rank ratings for top featherweight. So we've been doing really well down there. It's captain designed primarily and driven by Matt Boers, our teammate from Ohio. And so the heavyweight version is kind of the featherweight times 2 in every dimension. And then, we made the treads extra wide. And so we think it would be really competitive. A lot of people say, oh, you're just copying the meta. We've actually been designing featherweight Emulsifier we started working on that the season Tombstone one. So verts were not meta when we started building this, but a lot of people's heavyweights have started to resemble the design that Emulsifier has had for a long time. We're really excited about it. We think what's cool is that, again, it's a unique form of motion. And this isn't just to say, hey, let's get on the show with Endgame, so we put treads on it, right? That's not what the inspiration was. What happened was that the design evolved from trying to make, there was a robot at the time, I'm blanking on the name right now, but we tried to make a sort of a version of an existing vertical spinner in the featherweights. We want to make that with a bigger disc. We're like, let's make this, but like even bigger, like crazy, like just an insanely big disc in a featherweight. And the treads were the lightest weight solution for optimum maneuverability based on our internal component layout. 4-wheel drive would have required belts and chains to get power to the 4th wheel. But when we used the treads, the tread is the belt. So it's sort of a double purpose, and it doesn't weigh any more than just the rubber on the wheels would have weighed. So we save the weight of that extra chain or that extra belt, etc. So it's weight efficient, it's traction efficient, it looks cool, but it was mainly inspired by purpose, right? Similarly to Shatter, we use these wheels not just as a gimmick to get on the show, but because it allows us to aim the hammer. So the treads allow Emulsifier to be the most maneuverable featherweight vert that there is. And we want to bring that to the heavyweight scale because it's been working for us. And again, it's purpose driven. This isn't let's copy people. It's like a design we've been tweaking for like 5 or 6 years now. So, and it's just how big of a vert can we make and still be able to move really well. We're not going to hit deep 6 levels of size here, but Bots FC is always about maneuverability. So it's combining the largest possible vertical spinner with good maneuverability is kind of the mantra of Emulsifier. And the theme this year, totally redone, just kind of to be as cool as possible. It's vaguely based off of sort of like jet, like late World War II or into post World War II era, like jet airplane kind of graphics, just kind of cool looking, curvy, almost like a supercar. If you remember the Spiker supercars back in the day, kind of that aesthetic, taking that airplane aesthetic, putting it somewhere else into kind of a automotive world is kind of the vibe we're going for with the look and the graphics. Just trying to make something cool like Shatter, just cool and different looking, and maintaining maneuverability with as big of a weapon as we can put.
For me, Emulsifier is my favourite £30 robot. There are none that do nicer things than Emulsifier does. It is just beautiful and also wildly destructive, and I love it. I love it so much, and I'm super pleased. Like watching that video that you put out was, it was just it was like a mixtape to my it made a mixtape to my love for robot combat because it was so cool, and it brings all the good stuff. Like I'm such a fan of Emulsifier. I've built my own Lego version of it, which is there full RC1.
Nice.
And
awesome.
It's great fun to drive. I love it so much, and I can't wait. And
Yeah.
I really hope BattleBots pick it this year because it looks phenomenal, especially with the lights and everything as well.
It looks really good.
It's really great. There's so many little details in it too that like you can't pick out in our application video or things like the whole geometry, the shape of it, the width, the size of the disc, the placement of the disc, the size of the treads is so we can reliably self-write without having to add a self-write mechanism. Yeah. Deep Six, for instance, has an entire secondary motor and chain system to get low enough torque so that their bar can self-write. It's really ingenious, but it has extra weight. On Endgame, they have an actual self-writing bar because of the way their wheels are so internal and protected. They can't drive upside down, and they don't have the ability to self-write without the bar. But because of the treads, because of their size and their placement and how they work, and the disc's placement and size, and the size of the tooth as well, we're able to self-write at the same torque that we use to spin up, using the wheels and the torque of the disc, which again enables us to have that weight efficiency. So the design is, it's a vert, but it's not your everyday 4-wheel drive vert. We're not going to end up upside down on our ears because we don't have ears. So the geometry doesn't do the thing. I might be jinxing ourselves here, so I'm gonna knock on wood. But we've put a lot of time into making it as good as can be, and the geometry and the shape is very optimized to be as maneuverable and efficient and as high power as possible. So we're really, really excited to get that on there because we've had Shatter and the heavyweights for a while, building the heavyweight hammer, and in the featherweights we always had 2. So it felt weird to not have the second robot. So hopefully we'll be able to get the second robot up there and have another reason for people to fear Bots FC.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's exciting times. Yeah.
I have 2 final questions. Question 1, will we get to see Emulsifier back at Norwalk this year?
Oh, for sure. Emulsifier will be back at Norwalk this year. We're already talking upgrades and such. And hopefully we'll also see Knockoff White at Norwalk this year with the
That's my
update
question
to
too.
the weight limit. We can now safely bring it without a complete redesign. It needs a rebuild, but that'll enable us to bring it as well. So really exciting NHRL year for us, hopefully.
So I had one final question. Obviously, you can see me. I'm wearing last year's white Bots FC shirt. Myself and Jevon have ordered this year's. What colour are we thinking for it? Oh no! He's got it there.
It's there.
No way. Oh,
Hey.
that's so good.
So they just came in earlier this week. We shipped out a majority of the domestic orders. The international ones take a little bit longer.
No
and there were a few we were having issues with. They should be getting shipped out tomorrow. We're going to box them up today. So yeah, I was keeping that as a last minute surprise. We do have them. I'm so sorry they didn't come in before the playoffs, but they should be there for
bounty hunters at least.
For bounty hunters.
Well,
we had a snafu with Chinese New Year causing a big delay and backup with our supplier, but they're here now.
my last question was actually going to be, what colour are we thinking next year? Because obviously you've got white, got blue. What are we thinking for 2022?
Yeah, we started with black back in 2019. 2020 had the whites. 2021 was the two-tone kind of blue, purple, red. It's tough. I don't know exactly what we're going to do because I really like the 2021 versions, but we've got to do something. You got to keep up the tradition of new jerseys. So we'll think about it. It's not decided yet exactly what it'll be.
Pink?
But, open to suggestions. Pink, I think this year's, we were going for kind of a pink to blue gradient, and they came out more of a pink to purplish red gradient, more on the blue side. And so maybe just push it, keep the triangles or
I hear the colour scheme of pink to orange works quite nicely. I've got no ulterior motives, and it's definitely not what we're going to go for going forward to RoboCast.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, this is almost a pink to orange gradient. I got going in the back here. Yeah, we've also got to figure out what jerseys for Emulsifier if we get them in. So we probably would have different jerseys for the different robots.
Away kit?
That one obviously has a different color scheme with the orange, kind of yellow, red sunset theme with the colors. So
you've got to do a home and away kit, surely. It's got to be done.
I was thinking, should we have a red square and a blue square kit?
Ooh.
Now that's the one.
And that's what separates it. That could be fun.
Food for thought. But Adam and Paul, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully we'll get to see more Shatter eventually in BattleBots Bounty Hunters, whenever that's released. We still haven't been told yet, but
I imagine they're going to tell us at the end of the last episode there'll be a trailer or something. Probably, maybe.
Sure. I think they're trying to keep the robots competing in it secret so they don't spoil. Last year, people would be like, oh, you could tell who wasn't in the tournament.
I mean, they did kind of sort of spoil a whole bounty in one of the trailers for the series, so they've got themselves to blame for that.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks for having us. Always a joy to come on. I'm going to have to give a shout out to our sponsors. Thank you to Prismere, who manufactures all of our aluminum components. Thank you to TMS Titanium, who provides the titanium for the hammer arm. And thank you to Max Amps, who provides all of our batteries. And it says Koos Watches on the butt of our jerseys, but that's just a company that I haven't officially started yet because I made some prototype watches and they didn't work. So maybe one day we'll see watches actually come out, but
nice.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. Well, with that all said and done, I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been World of Woodrow.
I'm Paul Gancitano.
I'm Adam Wrigley.
And Steve sends his love. And
he does.
Myself, Steve, and Jevon, hopefully we'll be back next week for more BattleBots Round of 32 action. We'll see you then.
Adios.